Hello and welcome. Welcome to a great conversation. I'm sitting here in the sunshine, about to embark upon communication and conversation with the wonderful Anne. I'm going to let Anne introduce herself in a moment. Look at that beautiful smile. I came into contact with Anne through the power of social media because we are poles apart in terms of where we are in countries. But I was drawn to Anne through her work, and as an English woman, as soon as sex comes up, I am relaxed in this conversation. But I can still sense those little triggers from when I was little. My nan used to say to me, "Put your head in a pillow, close your ears." As soon as someone was kissing on the TV, I was brought up in a Church of England school. It's a lot of sin. So how does that impact the way that we receive? Because ultimately, sex is a way of receiving, being able to satisfy yourself is a way of receiving. And this is what I want to explore with the very gorgeous Anne in this conversation. So Anne, welcome, my darling. Really good to see you.
Thank you so much. I'm really pleased to be here, and if we can talk about sex, I'm even happier.
Bring on this conversation. So Anne and I want to talk because we're interested, I'm especially interested in creating a conversation around a more in-depth approach to nature. The word cyclical comes up. I find that quite a word. It feels a bit kind of scientific-y. I don't know, but in resonance is what I'm looking for, in harmony with our natural surroundings. And as we look at spring, we see it is a time of the archetype of the maiden. This is when that energy is really bubbling up and it's getting curious, it's getting creative. It's a time to start striking up new conversations, new relationships, testing the waters. And so how does this impact our ability to receive? Because when we look at that maiden archetype, and again, it's all perspective, I'm very aware, I'd be interested to hear what you think. When we look at the maiden archetype, she's effervescent. She's wanting to dip her toe into everything. Has the ability to be everywhere. So how does that impact the ability to receive? I'd be interested to hear from you, Anne. What do you reckon?
So if we talk about archetypal things, I think maiden is very much, as you said, in that I'm not very good at archetypal. I clear that immediately, but it's something that I've actually been discussing recently in my own podcast. There's an episode coming out on Friday, which is about male archetypes: the king, warrior, the magician, and the lover. And we have, in female side, we have maiden, mother, and then what the hell do we have? And then we have the old crone. And I was kind of, I'm in that third category. What do you call me? And he said, I don't know, old hag. And I nearly said, F you. And we had a really interesting discussion. So I'm really happy that you brought this up on the female perspective as well. But also, these are archetypals. Archetypes can be anywhere and within any kind of a body or gender. And also we can also put them in business, for instance. We have the seasonality, maybe not Cirque, you said you didn't like the cycle, but maybe it's seasonality that we kind of process in business. We're very used to having spring and summer, and the summer is the peak time of, best performance and, having everything, money's flowing in and the clients are happy and everything is just hunky-dory. But nobody ever thinks about the autumn, which is that third female archetype in a way. Or even the winter when we need to hibernate. And even in businesses, we need to really think about, just let's step back and just see what the new spring season brings up, what creativity. But what is that culling that autumn, where we are kind of taking stock, harvesting and deciding, okay, this needs to go in the compost heap. This is dead. This doesn't work anymore. And I suppose when we come into that perimenopausal, menopausal stage where we don't have a name, or maybe the society gives us a name that, yeah, we are, shall I say, angry perimenopausal, menopausal bitches. I don't like that. You know, I'm not defined by my hormones.
Yeah.
And just because I'm not producing babies, I'm creative as hell. You know, I
Mm.
can create, I can come into this second spring
Mm.
of maidenhood as a mature woman, and I can really be in that. I can create new worlds. I can create new revolutions. I can create new businesses. I can create new communities, and there is inherent creativity within the feminine, and the
Mm.
feminine lives in anybody. You know, be it masculine, non-binary, whatever.
Mm.
So we're not talking about genders here, like women and men.
Yeah.
At least I'm not.
Yeah.
But it touches me deeply because at the stage of life I'm at, my children are grown up. Just the last one flew out of the nest last Christmas, and I miss them. I miss
Do
them
you know
all.
what? Do you know what, Anne? Can I just interject there with regards to that perimenopause? And again, we're coming into another equivalent of that second spring. Stats have shown that this is a time, this period of transition and change actually spurs, like you said, women to create their own businesses, to create the change that they deeply require, a change that they might not have been aware of because life had been so busy, because they were busy getting caught up in a society that saw only the doing aspect of living and working and breathing and everything else. And it's a wonderful time because you say, yeah, I am actually creative around this time. But naturally, again, this is what can occur for some women, the drive to want to create a sense of satisfaction and purpose before they go into, you know, I don't necessarily use the crone, I use the wise woman, but the archetype of what is menopause and beyond, before you settle into that role. And I think, you know, coming into what does spring mean? How do you resonate with it? What's your experience? And it's all about taking those pockets, isn't it, of understanding whether it is from the outer seasons of spring that you learn from, that you learn how to resonate, or is it the inner season within the menstrual cycle of spring, or is it the change of evolutionary phases? But again, how does this determine the act of receiving? And
Yeah.
I'd love to hear what you say, because it must have, you've got to a point in your life where you are transitioning, you have transitioned, you've seen a lot, and there
Yeah.
is wisdom there. How has your relationship with receiving changed from, I mean, let's go back to, I mean, puberty, you know, how was it then? How was it when you came into menstruation and you was a young, vibrant woman, and you're still a young, vibrant woman, right?
Thank you,
Um,
dear.
in her 20s, how did it change in your 30s, and so on and so forth? Are there like clear memories that you have in regards to that?
As a teenager, I was very much in a bad place. So I think I've just kind of come to terms. I gave an interview for Authority magazine about my PTSD and complex PTSD, and it was very interesting to reflect on that time. I'm definitely in a good place now.
Mm.
And as you said, I've experienced a lot. I've gone through a lot, and having been raised as a Finnish woman, there is a kind of unspoken thing that you can have it all as a
Is that not
woman.
everywhere though? I feel like in the Western
No,
culture, that is, it's like, feels like it's
no.
everywhere.
But I mean, we had to pay for the war reparations after we lost the war to you
Mm.
guys, and that was because we had to choose Hitler or Stalin, and we chose, unfortunately, Hitler. But without doing that, we might be speaking Russian at the moment.
Mm.
So we had to pay for the war reparations. So women stayed at work, and we've been equal. We were one of the first ones to get the voting rights for women in the world, I think, after Tasmania. And we had the first female parliamentarians in the world. And our still current prime minister twerks, and she's 36.
Love
And the
that.
government has 5 women leading the 5-party coalition. So it's an inspiration, but the shadow of that is that even though we have a public nursery to help a woman to achieve and have everything she wants, I still burned out because I never felt I was good enough, and I never learned to receive help. I never even asked for help. It was like, it's still like that war, payment for martial aid. We just struggle on our own. We do the stuff, we keep our chin down, and we just work and work and work and work and work. And only when we're practically on our deathbed, we might ask for help. But it comes from that inner drive that, is passed generation through generation, that you don't ask for help. You just struggle and you go through the thick and thin. You have the famous Finnish, winter war spirit where, you can do anything. And to me, I now understand it's toxic. And when I travel in places, because last Christmas I left England and I decided that it's my time now to receive. I've always wanted to travel. I always loved going interrailing when I was young. That was one of the things actually when I was in puberty that helped me to be happy, was to see other people, how they live, and connect to other communities and cultures and languages. And I've just come back to Europe from Morocco a few days ago, and it was just very poignant to realize that how women are in very different spaces in different cultures. And as a Western woman, I felt it's a friendly, kind country. They're very welcoming. There's no alcohol-induced crime because they don't drink. But I didn't see women anywhere. And if I did, they had scarves, and it's their choice. I don't judge that. But I felt that I missed a female community. I saw men everywhere. And because I was traveling with a man, I was safe in terms of nobody, was disrespectful. But it just made me to really think that we need to talk more as women. We need to have that sisterhood, that community where we, bolster each other. We help each other. And that's why I love Project Woman so much. As I said to you in the first place when we met, this is amazing. Well done for doing this. And you're fantastic. This is what world needs, is people to stick together. Whether it's women, but also men. Men ought to have communities of their own, which is not based on sport and war and that kind of camaraderie, but actually sitting around a fire, whether it's a figurative or real one, and sharing how they feel. And I think the younger generations, like my son, who's in the uni, he says that they can do that. They can actually show their emotions. And that's what I saw in Morocco. Men are very close and physically close. They hold hands when they walk, they're not homosexual. And they really are happy to see each other and support each other and have that kind of emotional intelligence, which I really respected. Because I think in lots of Western countries, there is that kind of feeling that men and boys can't cry and you can't have that kind of camaraderie. It has to come from that quite toxic warrior archetype that is not integrated. So I think the receiving is very much, for me personally, linked to that kind of upbringing where you just don't, it's kind of a pride thing that we need to pay. We got help to stay independent, and we need to now pay that debt. And it's a little bit like your sins go into the whatever 7th generation. It seems like the same thing, that I'm still paying for that debt for the Allied forces to give us that martial aid, and I'm still just trying to struggle on my own and not really ask for help. And I think if you go way back, women were the gatherers. And men were the hunters who had that linear approach for, anything. And we can see that in business, in Wall Street, in everywhere. And even in film industry, it's very masculine gaze, how films are made in Hollywood. and it's always looking at a woman. And actually, when women were gatherers, we went together. We went in groups. We foraged
Yeah.
foraged together, and then we cooked together. We looked after the children together in the cave.
Mm.
And that's kind of been lost. And we've become more men in business, more masculine, more linear, rather than meandering and taking turns and, oh, there's some better mushrooms over there, or blueberries or whatever. And we've lost that kind of, what you call, kind of like a circularity, that kind of way of, let's say, for instance, in business, how would we build businesses based on the way we were gatherers in all those years ago? Would be partnerships.
Yeah.
It would be kind of, this is what I'm good at. This is what you're good at. Can we join forces, and can we bring somebody else in? And, and let's figure out this together. Because when women gather, wherever women gather, they create worlds, they create better generations, they create better food. Everything just gets better when you do things together.
Can I'm really intrigued, because you've referenced it a few times now, is this the repayment from the war.
Yeah.
Do you feel that it echoes still through you and your psyche today? And
definitely. Yeah. And I think it's called epigenetics. So it is like, my father told me that when he was a child, and he's he didn't see the war, Second World War, but he was born soon after it. And my grandmother was a breadwinner. My other grandmother was a breadwinner. My mother was a breadwinner. So because the men were injured in the war, they couldn't work so long or at all. So they were invalids. And that again kind of reflected in my mind that this is what women do. We are the breadwinners. We achieve. We are successful. It never ever occurred in my mind I would be lesser than a man. And there is, even when we had our first, or actually the only female prime minister when my kids were small, some of the mates were saying that, when she couldn't anymore stand for the third term by law, said, we didn't even know man can be a president.
Really?
But it feels like, that kind of emotional, because I would say it's emotional disability. If you don't know how to ask for help, and you don't know how to receive help, or you don't know how to receive, it's a handicap on the emotional plane. And because everybody was so busy, Finn's a small country but very proud, so we needed to pay for the war debt, and that's why we got so. At the moment, we're one of the AAA countries in terms of credit rating, like the Holland is, and so on. So that kind of did good for the country, and joining the EU for sure. But it's something that when the men came back from the war, there was no time for. Nobody knew what PTSD was. Nobody knew how to deal with these damaged souls that had seen the most horrors that nobody should be seeing and experiencing, and then also being crippled. So it wasn't talked. It was kind of brushed underneath the carpet, if you like. And when the new generations were born, my granny was absolutely, both of them, absolutely beautiful souls, and they provided the feminine, the hearth, and all the baking and everything, as well as the money. But I think there was something that we all carry from those damaged souls, those men who came from the front. Some guilt. I'm not good enough. I need to do more. I need to be better. If I was better, if I'd been better, so and so wouldn't have died. Or there is. I don't know, but there is this new science, and I really would like to look into it, called epigenetics, where you don't just inherit DNA that has a faulty gene for, I don't know, migraines or cancer or whatever. you can also inherit emotional states.
Mm.
And I think that's quite powerful study,
Mhm.
especially when we think about receiving, because if there's generations before me who've never felt that they had the help, but there's karma, you need to pay it back. So,
Mm.
but how long do we need to pay back? When comes the time that I can say, actually, I just like to enjoy and sit back
Mm.
and just have some really delicious me time or mate time or play time or self-pleasure time or time or
Don't you think though? I mean, I completely understand this. I know I understand the epigenetic term, and especially in regards to chemical physiology. But for
all right.
me, it's like what I said earlier. It's about the echoes, isn't it? The echoes of the past that are communicated down the lines, and I refer to, for ease, that of feminine health. So we used to whisper about the menopause. We used to whisper about the period because that's what everyone before us did, because we knew that there was shame within that. We didn't want to let that out. There was sin there surrounding a woman's body. Like the echoes come from the communication that was passed down to you. And when I look at my lineage and I go back to my great grandmother and I see, you know, anger, like
Yeah.
hard, like hot, not not like that, but they were strong women,
Yeah.
and but through and they didn't know that it was even there, is what I'm trying to get at. They didn't realize that there was other options where we have this all now, and it seems quite alien to my grandmother to have all of these options. But back then it was, this is what you do as a working class woman. This is the only avenue you have. So within that container, if you're unable to explore, you can see why the anger and the frustration comes out. When I look at that, like with my mum, I can see what the anger was there, because again, in the 80s, you look back, I mean, that was all about what women look like, wasn't it? It was about, you had to be slim, you had to be white, you had to be blonde haired, your
Still
skin.
do.
Yeah, there's still that out there. And
Yeah.
I see, when you put someone in such a superficial box, how that can create anger. But then from anger, there's no ability to receive, because you feel like you're trying to fight all the time. You're fighting to be heard, aren't you? And so with regards to what you're saying with the epigenetics and how that rolls through, for me, on an emotional basis, it's the communication, how you are spoken to, and how that conversation trickles down. And it's been an eye-opener for me in regards to my ability to receive the life that I really want.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Game
it's
changer.
also a nervous system thing, isn't it? Because
Mm,
your trauma, the anger can be a stress response
mm,
for something that has been done to you, or you've experienced, or is unfair, or there is even a trauma or some fright, some fear, and the emotion is kind of what is behind that, what is underneath that anger, if you like.
mm,
What is there? Is there a fear? Is there sadness? Because anger is always much more productive emotion than sadness.
mm,
Sadness can lead into depression if you don't feel that you can express the sadness and be accepted and seen in that. So actually, anger it's like a defense system response where you can still act out and you can still take action and you can still do stuff and get things done, because you have to. You
mm,
still have to bring food on the table. You still have to look after the kids. And I think that's one of the things. Because of my own traumas, I've studied trauma informed coaching. I'm a tantric sex and relationship coach, and one of the things that I've learned through lived in experience, but also what I've studied, is that most people have, if not all, been traumatized. And you can say, that they have some kind of, if trauma is too big a word, we can say wound, like a core wound, like I'm not enough, or something like that, or I'm not lovable, or I'm not worthy, or, you know, that these are core wounds, aren't they? And they come from childhood, one way or another. And to be able to then still be in the world, you might kind of get stuck in that anger state, which is the fight flight, you know, the fight one, where you fight because there is still energy in that. And fleeing can be something where you just don't take responsibility, and you just kind of, you just can't, you just can't, you know, you have all sorts of commitment issues, or lack of responsibility issues, or you just kind of never commit to something. And if those two responses don't work, you can then go into freeze or fawn. And fawning is what is most probably least talked about. And the freeze is very much, it can be just, you know, truly your body can collapse. You fall into depression. So you can see why the anger is actually better than allowing it to go into freeze. And pleasing is something that women have learned, because if they have been traumatized, let's say that the fight and flight didn't work, and freeze is not an option because, you know, it's not that productive. But pleasing can be very productive, because you can try to preempt something horrible happening, and you kind of become a people pleaser, and then you feel you're an imposter, and you get very critical about yourself, and you never kind of rise up to the normal self-regulating space where you can have self-compassion, you can ask for help, you can bring your, you know, asking for a friend, you know, you can just do that if you are in a normally regulated state. But being in freeze and fawn, you know, it takes long time, and before you can come down from there into the normality, you know, like a more normal social regulation, is through that anger as well, you know, or fleeing, and it kind of comes back down here. So it's like a what is it called, bell curve, you know, Gauss graph. And so it's very important that before we kind of even learn to come out of that anger, we learn to have that self-compassion. We learn to be okay with our what we see as a failure. We learn to voice them, like you said, communication to other people, that, hey, look, I'm not coping now. Can you just come over and we just talk this through? And women luckily talk things through and they feel better.
Yeah, more so
Men,
than men, right? Yeah.
men it's not the same. So
so Anne, how do you support people to receive on a greater capacity?
It would be through pleasure.
We've hit it. What, I mean, it's like the chicken and the egg, right? Do you start with self-pleasure, or do you start with pleasure with another? Or does that depend on what's going on within you?
Absolutely. It's all very individual. And I think when we are doing something hard, like healing or clearing or having any kind of self-development path, it's bloody hard. That's what it is. Journey is bloody hard. So what do we need? I think it's like a train track. You know, you have the healing path on the other side, where you're clearing and, you know, going really understanding what the core wounds are, you know, just really working on them and developing yourself, and you're really up leveling everything and blah blah blah. But it can get so boring. First of all, boring, and it can be too painful. So that's why we need the pleasure path as well. And that's why I talk about selfishly happy revolution, which is the next sexual revolution. Unashamedly, I'm the self-appointed leader of the next sexual revolution.
I love this. I was like, just need a bandana and a few doobies.
Going barricades. But no, this sexual revolution doesn't start from there. It starts from within each one of us. To really finding what is pleasurable for us. It's not outsourced for a partner who should know how to give me an orgasm. It's not outsourcing it to porn. You know, it's not something that we need to kind of get stimulation from the I don't know, glamour models or especially not Hollywood industry. But anyway, so it's something that Tantra teaches, that we have this inner technology of everything in us. Anything we need is here in ourselves. And that's why I think Tantra works so well for business people, because both having children and families and business are so tough, that they are the kind of healing paths, because both of them will get you so triggered. All your core wounds, all your traumas will come up, either with families or with business, or both, if you are lucky that you have both of them.
1, 2 legs, 1.
And that's why the pleasure, you can also find it from yourself. So it's all the kind of, understanding the chakra systems, but also in Chinese Taoistic tradition, it's like 3 dantians: your lower belly, your heart, and your third eye. And you can, there's so many beautiful processes and tools that can, I can guide people through, and it's always experiential. I talk now a lot, and of course on my podcast I talk a lot, and I can be quite challenging, because I want to be challenging. But when I hold space for somebody in coaching, it's a very safe space to come up with whatever you need to bring and want to show and deal with. And it's tantric coaching, or at least how I do it, is very gentle. It's soft. It's not
Well, you
pushy.
can't meet force with force, can you?
No.
You can't. It just doesn't work. It just leads to a battle. Yeah, I hear you.
Indeed. But it doesn't mean it's not powerful, and it doesn't mean it can transform just like that. Because in Tantra, it's different to yoga, for instance, even though they come from the same root. Hatha yoga and Tantra comes from the same philosophy and same root. In yoga, you need to at least if you're me, decades of asanas before you can master any of them. And then you give up for decades. But just shows how old I am. But with Tantra, because it's about consciousness, so it can happen like a flash. It can happen very quickly. That there is an insight, and a transformation can happen very quickly. So even though it's mild and gentle approach, it is very safe, loving, compassionate space I hold. And everything that comes up, anything that people learn, comes from them, because I have so much trust in your body, mind, in your inner wisdom, in your knowingness, which is ancient, which is the whole idea that we're all one. I mean, we've been talking about epigenetics and generational ancestry lines, but there is not really time. It's like when you heal yourself, you heal the ancestors, you heal the future generations. There is no time. It's not linear. Time is not linear. That's how we've been taught, it's a bit skewed how we've been taught about time. Whether it's circular, I don't know. Whether it's seasonal, I don't know, but it's something that is not linear for sure. And there is so much that can really, your memories will change from your childhood once you've healed yourself. Even your parents will remember your childhood differently once you've healed yourself. It is like magic in so many ways. And that's why pleasure, because we lost pleasure. We lost pleasure with the church. We lost pleasure when a religion started to control people. And it is a control mechanism. I mean, I'm spiritual, and I do respect all the teachings of different religions where there is some common denominators, but ultimately when they are run by men, it's a controlling system, especially towards women. And so bringing the pleasure back, because pleasure is your birthright, is just, that was the thing, the magic ingredient I realized in my healing, that and that actually gave me so much more energy. It also gave me so much more hope, and so much more when you can kind of transform form your, what we call in society, negative emotions into energy. It's just unbelievably beautiful. You're not anymore defined by your anger. You're not defined by your sadness or your, being shamed or worthiness issues or anything like that. And I was just having a discussion with another female entrepreneur, and she said, you can never get rid of the I'm not good enough. Everybody has that. And it's the one thing you can never get rid of. I detest that. I said, no, I'm sorry, I object to that. You can, because you just need to love that part of yourself. And there are processes and ways in which you can really learn to bring that into the center and into the integration. And pleasure is one of the things. No.
A way to bring this conversation to its natural close. Reflecting back on our conversation, obviously, Anne, it is all about the pleasure. We cannot receive when we are in an antagonized state, when we are in a driven masculine state, which is bang, 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 bang. It makes it, well, the way that it's making me feel that's not possible to truly receive, because we have to allow a part of that feminine to create a softness. So for that softness for you to actually receive that energy, both have to be in flow, both have to be in harmony. You can't have receptiveness if one is dominant, because it just doesn't work.
May I comment on that very briefly?
Yeah, no, I'm open.
Because we have this polarity teaching about feminine and masculine sides, but if you're interested, I would invite to listen to the next episode on Friday on Tantric Sex for lovers and others.
I will share this in the details below, people.
Because I spoke with Mikey Brackett from the States, and he's a coach and a therapist and a Jungian psychologist. So we talked about the archetypes, and one of the things is that if we kind of identify masculinity being like you described, and like we've talked about that kind of linear, pushy action man and all that, competition and so on, it comes from a wounded warrior. It comes from that archetype that is not integrated. And if you always come from one archetype, you're not well. You need to be able to have all those archetypes, whatever gender you are and however you identify with, into alignment, and to kind of like today, I've been kind of flowing between different archetypes of myself and what I call subpersonalities. I'm not schizophrenic, but I call them subpersonalities, and I love them dearly. But you in different situations, you pull different parts of yourself that come out, in a more upfront, and then you kind of, so it's like a dance with yourself.
Okay, so what are you saying about the masculine then? So are you saying that my description wasn't correct?
I'm not criticizing that. Don't.
No, I'm just interested. I'm interested
on that. I wanted to build on that, because I think there is a lot of misconception when we polarize things. That there is either, and feminine is always submissing and flowing and kind and loving and compassionate and receiving, and then there's a masculine that's the opposite. It's not so. And actually, if you think about feminine, how, if you look at lioness and somebody comes in front of her cubs, she will kill you.
Yeah.
Feminine is not meek. Feminine is not able to kill. Feminine is Kali. If you want to have another archetype from Hinduism, the goddess that kills, slays demons. Feminine, and that's why I'm quite strong about this, because lots of tantric teaching, lots of these big gurus that promote on internet and Instagram everywhere, they say this, that feminine needs to just receive and kind of be submersive and just surrender, and the masculine comes and takes, and every woman wants that, and this is BS. I mean, yeah, sometimes when the time is right, why not? Come and take me away. I mean,
Bring it on.
But it's not always like that. and it's toxic because it suppresses that Kali, that demon slayer energy of a feminine. And there's so much more. There's black and white and gray and all colors. And we need to just understand that there is a kind of we need to have a balance and harmony. And if there is so much of the feminine energy being put into shadows and not understanding that also feminine can healthily embody different signs of feminine energy, but also masculine energy, because we also have masculine energy, and there are different archetypes. But then we don't, for instance, have a word in archetypal world for myself. So I had a very interesting conversation with a lady in Australia, and she's a midwife, and she said, I've decided that, and she's a little bit younger than me, but sort of similar stage in her life. And she said, I'm Maga. And that's the magician, that we have the king, the warrior, and lover, and then magician. And then you have Maga. We don't need to call her a witch or old hag, or, it's that, what you were saying, the wise woman. Whatever name we can come up. I mean, obviously now Maga is make America great again, which is not what we're talking about here.
Well, because it was interesting. You brought up within the feminine cycle, the crone, the maiden, and the mother. But when looking at the philosophy from the Red School, we see that there's that inner autumn where the Marga sits. She is the magician that sits there.
Yes.
And what I have found from my own personal experiences and reflections is that magician that the Marga turns into the warrior when I don't transition. So if I don't transition through the seasons, if I don't allow myself to be fluid, if I don't allow for that change, it's like what you're saying, you step into the shadow side of things, where I feel that warrior, there is a time and a place, but she doesn't have to have a fight. That you don't have to fight as a warrior. You can just be and feel very secure in your confidence. And there's a similarity with that and the Marga.
Yeah, and for me, talking from the tantric perspective, I mean, I'm not a Jungian psychologist, so I would kind of put those into even as a middle-aged woman, I still feel that I have all those different archetypes. I can come up from my maiden energy. I can be very coquettish. I can be really, embodying that teenager that I never was, where everything is possible and everything is so.
But why would you lose that as well? I mean, this is an interesting.
I don't want to. I want to embody her. And I call her the dancing woman, and she drives a red sports car.
I love that. Don't you think this is as well it's an old construct, isn't it, of women reaching, I'm in my 40s now, reaching a phase of life where everything just dies off. But it's not true, is it? It's not true. As far as I'm concerned, you continue to cultivate. It's like what you said. I'm going to cultivate until the day that I die. Why would I not? As long as I've got breath and blood flowing through my body and through my veins, I want to be part of it. And that is obviously a part of the mindset as well. I know, and what you garner through experience. But again, we're looking at that art of receiving and how we can get to that point in life where we believe that that's it.
But for instance, the art of receiving, if we go back to the Marga and the magician, and like in tantric practice, I have a process that I teach to my clients called sex magic, where you can manifest anything you want. And you can create new realities, and I find that that is my secret weapon. And when we have a kind of a toxic or a kind of I shouldn't be using that word so much, but unintegrated maiden, which the culture makes us to be, especially if you're in America and Hollywood, you have to have Botox, you have to have plastic surgery, you need to have, silicone boobs, you need to have labia surgery, which is all horrible. It's absolutely disrespectful for women. But if it's all done through male gaze, like Hollywood films are done, anybody who's interested in that, actually, there's a beautiful documentary called Brainwashed, and it's brainwashed.com. It's a movie. It's and you can watch it for free. We watched it last night actually, and it's still so powerful in my
Is it
brain.
on YouTube, Anne? What's it on,
It's on
sorry?
Prime, and it's if you
Prime.
go to brainwash.com, we can put the link in there, and
Okay.
you can just you don't need to download it. You can watch it online. I don't think there's a trailer on YouTube, I think, but the film itself you can watch. I think it's Kino or something. I don't know what these apps are. But anyway, so what's the kind of the society requires women to stay young because and this is research stuff. Any men prefers to watch always a 20-year-old woman. That's the thing. And then because everything is been conditioned to us through male gaze, the way film, cinematography in Hollywood is always looking at women in a different way. She's shot in the scenes differently to men. Men are three-dimensional, women are two-dimensional, where they just need to look pretty. And there's lots of body parts that's been filmed for women, and men are always doing something, and they are human beings. Women are objects. So when we've been kind of conditioned through patriarchy to this, there's no wonder that we kind of adopt the idea that for my success, I need to be looked at. And when I've been looked at by many men, I'm successful. I'm the eternal maiden. And that's why women alter their looks to look like 20-year-olds again. And that's why I find that even in sex coaching sector, if I look at the Instagram, for instance, for sex coaches, often they want to look like 20-year-olds. They're in skimpy clothes, they're posing, pouting, booty shoots. It's just kind of, why are you doing that? If
they're doing that for their own self-gratification, if they feel confident in their skin,
yeah, that's fine. I love, women. I would always encourage women to have boudoir shoots, photography, or doing burlesque. It's just be what you want. But if there is no consciousness that actually you are doing this because you've been conditioned that you need to be seen by men and liked by men, there is a lot of bias that you need to clear as a coach. And as an older woman in my MAGA years, I have a lot of compassion for them. I have so much compassion for them because I was there, but I was never comfortable to be looked by men because of my sexual trauma as a child. So I had a different issue to deal with. And now that I'm too old, I'm sort of, yeah, come on, look at me, I'm beautiful, aren't I?
But would you say that you're confident?
I lost that boat already, but I'm not going to go the Botox route.
But are you confident though with regards to your sexuality, Anne, and your right to receive?
Yeah, it's not easy because of my sexual abuse to receive. And I can often go into the pleasing mode, I know, and I put my hand up, and it is something I'm very conscious of. And that's why I do have so much compassion for people who are not there, who can't receive. And I think it's majority of the humanity who can't, and at least in Western world. But it is something that is an ongoing process, and I have a tender love for that part of me that had to go through something that wasn't correct, was not right, and something that was stolen from me. So it's what it is. But I'm perhaps. No, I'm not saying. I'm not saying. I was going to say that perhaps I'm better coach because of that. No, I'm not. I could have been better coach without that experience. It doesn't define me.
Well, that last sentence, "it doesn't define me," I think is an inspiration for anyone listening to this.
Thank you.
Because it is, there is so much trauma within sex and sexualization and the perception and the rights. It's, today I even had a conversation with a friend of mine who said she remembered as a young girl, she's always had an issue. She was tall, blonde, what she said you would consider attractive naturally. And she remembers saying goodnight to her dad, and his friends were sitting around the table. And she said, I knew they're all looking at me. She was in her pajamas as a young girl, and she just comes saying, and she said, I just remember the inappropriate stares. Nothing would have happened, but she said, I felt. And I said, but of course, your natural instincts knew as an intelligent woman that there was a threatening behavior there. Like, you knew that. And we can see, it's such a deep conversation. And I feel that we haven't even tapped into it and try and get an opposite sex to understand where women have come from in being subjected to no right over their body. No right. For a very long time, we haven't had any rights over our bodies. We have been subjected to what I consider really to be abuse. We've been prodded and poked at, and we're still told and medicated as to what our bodies should be doing and how it should be behaving, even to this day.
Yeah.
And so I feel that your story, Anne, is an inspiration. Do you need to be a better coach? I don't think so. I've spoken to you on numerous occasions, and I know that the wisdom that you hold, it comes from life, and that, to allow that to come out into the world, what a wonderful act of receiving for everyone else around you. So I thank you very much from my heart.
Gosh, thank you. I am doing my best to receive your words.
Yes. We're going to receive. And my darling, thank you so much for sharing your wonderful thoughts, your wisdom, and your stories with us. And thank you to the listeners. Thank you so much for tuning in and to listening and being patient. I'd be interested to know how you felt about our conversation. Please pop comments below. I will share Anne's details, but we'll be back, right, Anne? Because I feel that there is more to converse about on this subject.
Yeah, just give me a topic and we'll flow.
We'll rock and roll. We'll bring it on.
We'll dance.
Awesome. Gorgeous humans. Thank you.
Thank you.